I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Friday, March the 8th. Brought to you in part by Cargill RNM, or Right Now Mineral. Grass changes with the seasons. Shouldn't your mineral? Right Now minerals are formulated to allow you to match the mineral feeding program with the growing seasons, forage conditions, and nutritional needs of your cattle. Learn more at rightnowmineral.com. The Swingin' L Ranch had their cattle in Pratt, Kansas on Thursday. It's always a big deal. It did not disappoint this time, and just amazing what some of those cattle can bring when you keep them green and good like that. But we're going to talk all about that towards the end of the visit here. This will be the last visit for this week, and I won't have a weekly summary. Going to take my daughters and their pigs down to Houston Stock Show and see how we do down there, and take a little break and hopefully have some quality time down there. Why do we not show cattle? Well, I've never been comfortable with people leading cattle around on a leash. I do appreciate the commercial steer show that they do there. I did that when I was a kid, but the cost of gains that some of those kids quote in there are worse than Eastern Iowa farmer feeders, and I just don't feel like we can quite compete at that. But looking forward to going to Houston, and the good thing is I'm going to wrap everything up for this week. We've had our fat cattle trade and going to get you caught up on the top prices and kind of what's going on. But let's get to it. The board on Thursday, April live cattle futures up a nickel at 128.95. June was up 72 cents at 120.35. And all of your other out fronts were quite a bit higher. So that's kind of encouraging, but most of those out fronts still lower for the week because they were kind of tough on them earlier in the week. But you got a lot of guys kind of downer on the market here, and some of your analysts and some of your investors in the board are looking past the weather impact to the bullishness that we should get from the weather impact, and it's still going on. This weather hasn't cleared up yet. These weights are down. I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. And it's still, that hasn't come to fruit yet. We don't know how much tonnage we've lost. We don't know how many head of cattle we've lost. Talked to a lot of cow-calf producers up there in Nebraska and places. They are losing a lot of calves. You know, some of the places as much as half dead calves, just too cold for them to survive. And that's bound to make an impact at some level, but everybody keeps washing all this stuff over. But I guarantee you, this weather deal was as bad as we've seen in a long time, or at least in recent memory. And it's going to have a major impact. It's going to be the same as taking a whole lot of cattle off the board there when we lose that much weight. Your feeder cattle board, March feeder cattle up $2.25, a good jolt there, all the way up to 142.90, and quite a bit premium to what our index levels are for an 800-pound steer. April feeder cattle up $2.35 at 146 even. Your fat cattle did trade on Thursday. That's big news. You know, alert the press. We didn't wait till Friday afternoon to sell, because frankly, your cattle feeders didn't put up that big of a fight. We talked about it earlier in the week. I told you it was going to be steady, and they kind of make a big run at it, and then they get slapped back by your packers and put back in their place and reminded them who's boss. Then the next week they kind of just put their head down and take their lumps. But that's kind of what happened this week. It wasn't quite that easy, but didn't put up too much of a fight. 128 steady live price. Did have a few sales at 128.50, so we can call that a positive, mostly in western Nebraska, out there in that Wyoming country, right there where they have a cluster of feedlots there near Torrington. But 205 dressed was your market on a dress basis, and that's what we had last week too. But supposedly many are past, and some of the guys didn't want to take that. They thought they should have another bump, and again there they had a lot of weight loss in the cold country there, and so it's not going to bother them to keep feeding those cattle a little bit longer. Some of them will kind of quit you. Some of them you can get that weight put back on. But I tell you what, the conditions have not really improved when you get up in the northern plains areas yet. So it's not like they're going to get right over it. And then we've got all the mud yet to look forward to. You can't believe how much moisture's in that ground when the temperatures will finally come up, and it could be as miserable as the cold and the snow. But I can't reiterate enough about how you can't overlook this weather just because we're tired of talking about it. It hasn't even all come to fruit yet. Your actual slaughter information for the week ending February 23rd come in on Thursday. Has your steer carcasses, the weights all the way down to 874 pounds. That's 5 pounds less than just the prior week and 9 pounds less than a year ago. And those weights are going to continue to plummet as we start working through all those storm cattle, and I think it could be a little jolt that we may not be thinking about later as we work into this spring here. But your slaughter for this week running just about par, maybe just a little under, but 466,000. That's 3,000 less than the previous week and the same week a year ago. Look at your feeder cattle markets. Despite the big prices that we had on Thursday, it was mostly on stocker type cattle like we've been talking. We knew they were going to get wild, and we haven't even seen the first sprig of green grass yet, let alone getting rid of all the white misery that's out there on the horizon. But your real-time index late on Thursday or Thursday afternoon, 139.07, down 33 cents, but just about steady, only down about 17 cents a hundred for the week compared to the end of the previous week. So haven't lost a whole lot of ground, a little bit up and down depending on where you're at and what the weather was like. We had a bunch of slowdowns early in the week because of the bitter cold, and we are starting to get past that a little bit, but hasn't improved really that much. But now let's talk about the big show that happened at Pratt Livestock there in Pratt, Kansas. I tell you what, when you bring cattle in, like the Swingin' L Ranch brought cattle in, they're just green. Did not supplemental feed those cattle hardly at all, if any. May have had to a little bit to get through the really cold times, but those cattle are just burning up with quality and compensatory gain. That means that when you buy those cattle, you get to enjoy the fast early weight gain that they have whenever they're making up for what they could be weighing if they would have heavily fed those cattle. But that's what buyers want. They want that easy, quick gain. They want running gears. They're going to put everything else around it. They just want the ability to put pounds on, and that's what you get whenever you get cattle like this. There was about 4,000 head in Pratt, including those cattle. The market mostly $1 to $5 higher, spots as much as $8 higher, and that's taking into consideration the condition on these cattle. But over 400 head of the Swingin' L cattle come in here. I want to give you several of these quotes, and I want you to soak them in a little bit. 71 head green thin steers, 469 pounds, $213. 84 head weighed 550 pounds, $193.75. Another cut of those weighed 84 more of them weighed 554 pounds. Had a little more bidding on this time, got to $196. 81 head of green stocker cattle. These cattle will put on some really cheap gain and pick up all that compensatory gain on some kind of forage. But 81 head of them weighed 611 at $183.10. Wow. 82 head, just a pinch bigger, weighed 6 1/4 at $178.50. And then they had a load that might have been holdovers from last year, but had a bigger load, weighed 848 at $149 1/4. Your index for a slick 800 pounder is under 140. It's at 139.07. These weigh nearly 8.5 and bring $10 more than what the index is running. So that just goes to show you. And you kind of understand why this guy decides to sell those cattle in an auction market where he can take advantage of the competition. You ask that kind of money in the country for cattle, and you not only piss people off, they'll think you're crazy. But that's how you get the big prices. Run those cattle and not be embarrassed of the quality, and give them that kind of a weigh up and that kind of a flesh condition, and they will pay you for it. And then all the while you're building up the reputation. You know, he could bring some soggy fat cattle in there the next 2 or 3 years, and it would take a while for people really to figure him out, because he's established a reputation of having those really good cattle, and people that's bought them in past years come to buy them again because the performance on them is so amazing that they want to do it again. And then you run into people that they want to try it, and then they're bidding against each other, and it gets wild and crazy, and then that's what happens. But Ogallala, Nebraska, putting on a pretty good show of their own up there in western Nebraska, 5,000 head plus in Ogallala. Look at some of these quotes here. 82 head, weighed 610 pounds, beef stocker cattle too, 181.75, similar to what they did in Pratt. Another load, 62 head, weighed 780 at 150 and a half. That's getting close to that 800-pound benchmark, bringing over 150. But be some more good sales on Friday. Don't forget, Wahoo, Nebraska is having a big special on Friday. You can view and bid on that sale right here on dvauction.com on Friday. But going to sign off. Going to miss your next regular couple of visits, but we'll be back with you in the early to mid part of next week. And that's your feeder flash for Friday.